wages and overtime. This is just a quick overview about the most likely way that most of you will start out earning money. A wage is when you're paid an amount per hour. Paid an amount per hour. It's different to a salary. A salary, I'm paid a fixed amount per year and they split that up and pay me 1/26th of it every fortnight. But with a wage, it's often when the amount of hours you're going to work will change. You'll be rostered on for different amounts, and so they can't predict your amount per year. Now what that means is, often people are only meant to work up to about 8 hours a day, and after that they should be paid more, and that's called overtime. So overtime is being asked to work more than the agreed hours, or more than a particular amount per day. And it can be per day or per week. So a lot of people will have an agreed weekly amount of time of 35 hours, and if for some reason their boss needs them to work more than that, yes, they get paid for those extra hours, but they actually get paid more. And what they often get paid in is time and a half, which means being paid at 1.5 times the hourly rate. Or you could think of it as being paid for 1.5 hours when you've only worked 1 hour. And sometimes we get double time, being paid twice, 2 times the hourly rate. Or the other way you can think about it is being paid for 2 hours when you've only worked 1. So when we're calculating pay, if it's under the overtime cutoff, so let's just write under overtime cutoff. Now let's just scamper ahead to our question. So Yu-Yan earns $18 per hour for the first 8 hours she works each day, then time and a half after that. So her agreed overtime cutoff is 8 hours. So if she works less than 8 hours in a day, we don't have to worry about overtime. It's just the pay rate per hour, so she gets $18, pay rate times number of hours. But if it's over the overtime cutoff, so more than the overtime cutoff, then you need to find their overtime hours. So find overtime hours, and that's your number of hours minus the overtime cutoff. So for Yu-Yan, when she worked 14 hours, we need to find out how many hours of overtime she did. So that's her number of hours minus the overtime cutoff of 8 hours. So we'll do 14 minus 8, and we'll discover that that's 6 hours of overtime for Yu-Yan. So we'll come back to that and write it through. So first step is find our overtime hours. And then the easiest way to find the pay is to do, in brackets, their normal hours, so up to the overtime cutoff, plus 1.5 times the overtime hours times the pay rate. Because that's saying I'm getting 1 for my normal hours, I'm getting 1.5 hours for every overtime dollar hour I did, and then I'll multiply that by the pay rate. There's a different way of doing it, and if you prefer, you could work out their normal hours times the pay rate, and then 1.5 times their overtime hours times their pay rate. But I think this one's easy because it's all in one line. So let's work out Yu Yan's pay this today, on Thursday. She earns $18 per hour for the first 8 hours, and then time and a half after that. If she worked 14 hours on Thursday, find her pay. So first we find her overtime hours, and that's 14, which is her total hours, minus the cutoff, equal sign underneath. 14 minus 8 is 6 hours of overtime. Then her pay is, in brackets, we want the normal hours she worked, so she did 8 hours of normal time, plus she did her 6 hours of overtime, and she gets 1.5 hours for every hour that she did. So 1.5 times 6, and that'll add up all the hours she should be paid for, and then we times that by the pay rate, which is $18 an hour. And this is like the order of operations that we've looked at, but you can just grab your calculator. Let's do what's in the brackets first. 8 plus 1.5 times 6. So even though she only worked 14 hours, because she did 6 hours of overtime, she gets an extra 3 hours worth of pay. So this is 17 hours worth of pay that she gets, times her $18 an hour, times that by 18, she gets $306. And with equal signs are in a row, and we've got that's pay. So that's how you work out basic overtime based on time and a half.